Hey, thanks, Alan. Yeah, we're excited to share this data with you. We presented at the National Lipid Association as a late breaker, and then it was simultaneously published at the Journal of Clinical Lipidology. So we had 3 arms to the trial: placebo, the Obacetrapib alone, monotherapy, and the combination of Obacetrapib with Ezetimibe. And Obacetrapib in combination with Ezetimibe lowered LDL by 63.4%, and placebo was 6.4%. So a very potent effect on lowering LDL in the combination of both Obacetrapib and Ezetimibe.
Fantastic. Okay, so what percentage of patients treated with the combination of Obacetrapib and Ezetimibe meet the guideline recommendation LDL-C goal of less than 55 milligrams DL, and how did it compare to the placebo group?
Sure. So that's the exciting thing about this combination. 87.5% of patients got to the more aggressive new target of less than 55 milligrams per deciliter. This compared to no one in the placebo arm got to that below 55 milligram per deciliter. Look at 70 milligrams per deciliter. 93.5 got to below 70 milligrams per deciliter versus 16.7% in the placebo arm. So now we have, with the combination of both drugs together, a very powerful tool in our armamentarium to get more patients to those new targets for LDL lowering.
Great. Okay, so apart from the LDL-C reduction, what other lipid and lipoprotein parameters show statistically significant improvements with a combination therapy, and how are those parameters predictive of cardiovascular disease?
Well, the one that's the most prominent is HDL cholesterol raising. It raised HDL cholesterol by 136% in the combination arm versus no effect in the placebo arm. Now, the issue there, though, is that HDL raising is no longer thought to have a benefit on reducing major adverse cardiac events. However, we do believe the HDL raising has other benefits, and we're looking at that in our future trials, such as preventing the risk of diabetes or the conversion of prediabetes to diabetes. We know that statins actually increase the risk of diabetes, but we think our drug, with its mechanism of action by raising HDL, will mitigate that statin-induced increase in diabetes. And also, we're exploring the benefit of HDL raising on the prevention and treatment of Alzheimer's disease. So while HDL raising itself, we don't link to reduction in heart attack and strokes, we do think it has other benefits. Triglyceride lowering was pretty much very modest, no significant change on triglycerides. But the other exciting benefit was lowering Lp(a). Lp(a) went down by 47% with monotherapy of Obacetrapib and minus 40% with the combination of Obacetrapib and Ezetimibe. And Lp(a), as we're learning, is a new causal lipid effect on atherosclerosis, cardiovascular disease. And we think this added benefit is going to be exciting to evaluate in our phase 3 trials for what it may lead to when it comes to reduction of cardiovascular events.
Fantastic. Were there any significant safety concerns observed in the combination? And how did the safety profile compare to placebo?
So far to date, we've been very pleased with the safety profile of Obacetrapib. We have several hundred patients through phase 2, and the difference in side effect profile between Obacetrapib and placebo are really not present. And so we think of a very well-tolerated drug. Of course, we're going to look at safety as a major evaluation in our large phase 3 trials. We have 2,500 patients in one phase 3 trial, 300 in another phase 3 trial. Then we have a big cardiovascular outcome trial with 9,000 patients. So that will ultimately determine the safety of Obacetrapib for patients when those trials are completed.
Oh, fantastic. Okay, so based on the results from the ROSE2, how do you anticipate this combination therapy could potentially benefit patients at high risk of cardiovascular disease with residual LDL-C elevation despite existing therapies?
Well, we hope, based on this data and with the combination tablet being developed, that this could be the next go-to therapy for add-on to statins. So statins are the primary therapy, as they should be. They're they're effective, they're well tolerated, they have proven cardiovascular outcome benefits. So we have other therapies which are either less effective oral therapies or injectable drugs to lower LDL, like the PCSK9 inhibitors. These are all good options for patients, but with our profile that we believe we have to date, again, we need to get through phase 3 and demonstrate the safety and efficacy that we saw in phase 2. But if we do show that in phase 3, we believe this could be the next go-to therapy after statins to lower LDL and thereby reduce cardiovascular events.
Excellent. Okay. The study mentions a fixed-dose combination tablet formula. Could you elaborate on the advantages of a fixed-dose combination over individual drugs and how it might impact patient adherence?
Today's world, I still see patients in my lipid clinic. I run the lipid clinic at the University of Chicago, and I can tell you that it's always easier to take one pill than two pills. And I think the other big issue for U.S. patients in particular is the co-pays and getting prescriptions and seek. I even take medicine myself. I take both Ezetimibe and a statin, so I know you don't always get the drugs at the same time, and you run out of one versus the other, and you got to try to figure out how to get them all at the same time and different co-pays. So having one single pill can improve compliance. It's well documented. And then again, the added benefit is one co-pay or patient has to pay that can really, I think, dramatically improve how acceptable those drugs are for patients on the long term. We're talking about years of therapy. We need to keep a patient on for long term.
Great. Okay. So what is the significance of the 2022 ACC expert consensus decision pathways recommendations for very high-risk patients, and how does the combination of Obacetrapib and Ezetimibe address the needs of these patients?
That expert panel was very important because it for the first time in a U.S. expert report, did recommend that we look at a 55 threshold. Above that threshold, to add to a statin to further lower LDL. And so we believe with our combination tablet, the fixed dose combination, we will have that go-to drug, that oral therapy that's going to be well tolerated, we hope, based on our phase 3 data, as well as the improvement in compliance. So this is the guidelines for the first time as a report does in fact recommend 55 is that new threshold to add to existing therapy to maximize risk reduction.
Excellent. Okay. So the data show a median reduction in LPA levels of 47.2% in the monotherapy group and a 40.2% in the combination arm. Could you explain the clinical implications of this reduction in LPA levels for cardiovascular risk?
Well, it's well known that LPA is a very important risk predictor of heart disease. There are a number of LPA lowering therapies in development that are in phase 3. I believe that these therapies will prove that lowering LPA does in fact reduce cardiovascular events. Now, we're not seeking that indication with our drug. However, it's kind of a nice to have when you look at the overall profile of a drug. So we hope that when our drug is through phase 3, we'll be able to say the following. We lower LDL by roughly 45% in the monotherapy, 60+% with the combination. We're safe and well tolerated. We also have this LPA lowering benefit, which I think will potentially further improve cardiovascular risk. That's yet to be determined, based on all the trials that are ongoing.
All right. Were there any specific patient subgroups? All right. Were there any specific patient subgroups in the ROSE2 trial where the combination therapy demonstrated more substantial benefits in lipid parameters?
Well, we did look at those that have a higher rate of small dense LDL. And by the way, the Obacetrapib alone lowered small dense LDL by 92%, the combination by 95%. Total particles were dropped by 70% with the mono and over 95% with the combination. So we did find that in patients that do have a lot of small LDL particles, there was greater LDL-C lowering in those populations. And so that also opens up an intriguing, kind of subgroup of patients that do have high residual risk on statins. Because statins predominantly lower the larger LDL particles. A lot of small particles are left behind. And we showed that in our study that we look at small LDL particles that were at the end of the treatment, the placebo were still 662 on average versus 34 for the combination. So a dramatic improvement in the number of small particles on the combination of obicetrapib plus ezetimibe. So we think, again, we have to wait and see what happens in our outcome studies, but this could be another benefit that this combination has in particular for reducing cardiovascular risk.
All right. So look, you mentioned a couple of times, looking ahead, when do you expect the phase 3 trial for this combination therapy to begin? And what will be the key focus areas in the upcoming trial?
So the plan, the combination pill has already been developed as a prototype. We're now manufacturing the combination tablet. We've proven that the two drugs are bioavailable together and as a single pill. So the next step is to do a formal phase 3 trial looking at the combination tablet versus each of the individual components versus placebo. And that study will start in January, approximately in January of next year.
All right. Well, thank you, Dr. Davidson. I appreciate all of your questions and sitting down with us.